Hi, in this particular lesson, we are going to talk about a very interesting, a very important and critical leadership skill, but on the other hand, may not be that much well acknowledged and well accepted, or may not be in practice in most of the cases. One kind of leadership skill that's known as emotional intelligence. Now, most of the time, what we do, we generally try to import or try to adopt or try to apply different established leadership styles what we have learned in the last couple of modules, like servant leadership, then situational leadership, then normal managerial leadership style, different styles of leadership based on your task and people relationship. All these things are very much well accepted and widely used, but on the other hand, because of the change of the mindset of the people, because of the change of the society structure, family structure, and definitely because of the technological evolution, we must understand emotional intelligence or EQ is going to play one of the most important role in leadership. If you know your emotional intelligence, if you can manage it, if you can understand the emotional quotient of your workforce and can play with it, definitely nobody can stop your role as an effective leader. In this particular module, we are going to talk about how emotional intelligence is connected with leadership. Then definitely we are going to talk about different dimensions connected with it, the importance of empathy in managing the people, and definitely followed by a self-assessment. Where do we stand as a leader in emotional intelligence management? And now in the first chapter, or in the first lesson, at first, we are going to understand how emotional intelligence is connected with leadership or leadership in different organization or different kind of situation. Now let us understand at first why emotional intelligence, what is it, and why it is important. Now generally we talk about a lot IQ or intelligence quotient, because we know people with average IQs outperform people with IQs 70% of the time. So whenever you have a high IQ, definitely your performance would be much better. EQ has zero correlation with IQ. So definitely your emotional balance or your emotional quotient has nothing to do with your IQ. EQ, on the other hand, accounts for about 58% of the performance in most of the jobs. Because most of the cases what happens, as we are not able to manage our emotions, we are not able to manage our emotional outcomes based on different situations, based on different types of activity, we are not able to perform properly. Therefore, EQ point increases are highly correlated with your salary as well, because it's directly connected with your performance in the job. On the other hand, unlike IQ, you can substantially increase your EQ with effort. IQ after a certain age, it's very difficult to change. You need to put a lot of effort, lot of hard work, and a lot of effort has to be there. But on the other hand, in case of EQ, definitely by putting small effort and followed a proper structure, you can definitely improve it. Because of our brains varying and its biological fact that we always learn from different reaction, from different types of activity. So we at first behave emotionally, but later on, by learning the pattern, we can definitely manage it better. But only 36% of the people are able to accurately identify what kind of emotions are going to happen. Therefore, let us understand how emotions are going to happen, how emotions can be managed, and what are the different dimensions of emotion. Because we are not going to override or we are not going to carried away by our emotions. We need to control it. Let us understand it. Let us manage it. Now, we will understand how emotional intelligence actually affect leadership, because according to the emotional intelligence expert Daniel Goleman, Emotional intelligence, or abbreviated as IEI or EQ or emotional quotient, is made up of four distinct but complementary components. We are going to talk about it in detail in the next session, but here let us understand what are these four distinct components. Number one is self-awareness or recognition of your own emotion. Number two is your social awareness or recognition of others' emotion. Number three, self-management, ability to manage your own emotions. And social skill or relationship management, so ability to influence and manage others' emotion. So at first we need to understand our emotion and manage it. Then we need to identify the emotion of others and need to manage it. Once we are able to manage all these four components, definitely we would be a successful leader by managing our emotional intelligence. Now, how emotional intelligence actually affect leadership and management as well. So we will try to understand five essential elements which are very much important or contribute to the leader's effectiveness but is a very important emotional intelligence factor. Number one, development of collective goals and objectives. Number two, instilling in others an appreciation of the importance of work activities. Number three, generating and maintaining enthusiasm, confidence, optimism, cooperation and trust. Number four, encouraging flexibility in decision making and change. And number five, establishing and maintaining a meaningful identity for an organization. Obviously, all these 5 points are very much important or very much connected with an organization. But on the other hand, whenever you are able to manage it, whenever you are able to contribute in this aspect, definitely you would be a very much effective leader who can manage and can control the emotional intelligence of yourself and definitely for others. Now, in this next couple of slides, we will try to understand about different types of leadership styles or leadership practices, and then how emotional intelligence is connected with all these leadership styles or leadership categorization. So we know about all these leadership styles already. We have understood in different places, also in our last couple of chapters or last couple of lessons. But we are not only going to talk about this leadership style here, but also we are going to understand what is the underlying emotional intelligence in all these leadership styles. Number one, coercive or commanding, demands immediate compliance and obedience as evidenced by such phrases, do what I tell you. So they are very much demanding and they always want the workforce to do whatever they are saying. Number two, or authoritative and visionary. So they mobilize the people toward a vision as suggested by such phrases, come with me. So they always want that people will follow them. They will have a vision, they will have the authority, but they always want that people should always follow them. And that's why they can be considered as authoritative and visionary. Number three is affiliative, creates harmony and builds emotional bonds as suggested by people come first. So they always gives importance to the people. They always create a very good emotional bond with the people and they always give importance to them. So people is most important to them and that's why they can be considered as affiliative. Number four, are democratic, forges consensus through participation. What do you think? So they always want the workforce to participate with that in an interaction with them. So they always ask, what do you think? What is your opinion? And based on that, they actually take their leadership decisions. Number five would be coaching. So it develops people and strengths for the future and try this. They always try to mentor the people. They always try to teach them. They always try to coach them and they always try to develop the people. And number six, or the last one, is pace setting, or those who sets high standard of performance, do as I do now. So they are very much critical and very much very much gives importance to the performance and they always wants the people should follow whatever they are saying. Now one thing we must understand, all this 6 types of leadership styles, 6 types of leadership practices have some underlying emotional intelligence within this. Most of the time we always gives importance to the leadership style, to the act only, but not gives any importance to the emotional intelligence which is connected with this. Let us understand that. Now, if we talk about coercive or commanding, the underlying EI competency would be achievement, drive, initiative, and emotional self-control. Authoritative or visionary leadership will have an underlying emotional intelligence of self-confidence, empathy, change catalyst, and visionary leadership. Affiliative leadership style will have empathy, building bonds, and conflict management. Democratic leadership style will have teamwork, collaboration, and communication. Coaching leadership style will have developing others, empathy, emotional self-awareness. And pace setting leadership style would be conscientiousness, achievement, drive, and initiative. So one point is very much clear. Though we are following certain style, though we are practicing different types of style based on our own orientation, based on our organizational demand, based on our objective or the goal setting, but there are some underlying emotional intelligence among all these 6 types of leadership styles. If we are able to manipulate, if we are able to understand and can manage the emotional intelligence in all this type of leadership style, definitely the implementation, the practice, and the overall effectiveness of this leadership style would be much better. People would be more connected with this because obviously most of the time people may not like your commanding or authoritative leadership, but if you are able to catch the emotional intelligence and the emotion connected with the leadership style, definitely the people will follow you without any question. Most of the time it may not be a great correlation what I am saying at this point of time, but people say that political leaders, they sometimes play with the emotions of the people, or those who can play with the emotion with the people, say for example a film star as well, they can play with the emotion. Any leadership, they understand the emotion of the person very well. Any person who has established as a great leader, maybe an authoritative, maybe a democratic, maybe a commanding leader, but they understand the emotion of the followers, understand the emotion of the people very well, and they can play with it, they can manage it, they can place it in such a way that definitely people will follow them without any question. So you can face some challenges by adopting different types of leadership style, but if you are able to understand the emotion, if you are able to play with the emotion and can manage it well by following the 4th dimension what we have described just now in the last few chapters, in the last few slides, obviously your leadership effectiveness would be much better. Then in the next lesson, actually we are going to talk in detail about those 4 dimensions of your emotional intelligence. Now in this particular picture, we are going to understand that how motivation connected with these 4 things, where self-awareness, self-regulation, empathy, social skill, or the 4th dimension what we have discussed just now would be effective and important. Now in the next lesson, we are going to discuss about it in detail. Now also after that, followed by this, we will also talk about a chapter or a lesson where we are talking about empathy, how to manage your people with empathy, and definitely followed by a self-assessment of your emotional intelligence as a leader. Because as a leader, we must understand what is our present state of mind, how are we actually managing emotional intelligence at this point of time, where do we stand, and what are the gaps. Thank you for listening. Bye-bye. Hi all. In this particular session, we are going to talk about the different 4 dimensions of emotional intelligence or emotional quotient, what we have already started to discuss in our last session, where we have understood how emotional intelligence or EQ or emotional quotient is directly connected with your leadership effectiveness. You can go ahead or adopt any types of leadership style based on your situation, based on your own thought process, or based on your comfort zone. But on the other hand, if you are able to understand the emotion and the underlying thoughts of any followers or team members, definitely as an individual you would be much effective as a team leader or as a leader or as a manager. Now in this particular chapter we are going to understand how leadership role is directly connected with EI and how it is directly connected with the four dimensions of emotional intelligence, and how you can develop it, how you can manage it in a much better way to become an effective leader. Obviously this is one of the most trending and most effective way of leadership at this point of time, because one thing we must understand, we are not dealing with robots, we are not dealing with machines, we are dealing with emotions, humans, and therefore the emotion is going to play a very important role there. Humans have emotional intelligence, machines also have intelligence quotients or IQ. Nowadays you know that. But machines cannot have emotional quotient, which is a very unique thing only applicable to human beings. Now in this particular session, we are going to understand how leaders are going to manage emotional intelligence or emotional quotient as an individual. Definitely it will start at an individual level, how it will be applicable as a change agent, how as a relationship builder, and how it would be applicable as an influencer and collaborator. Let us start with the first point, where we are going to understand how leaders can manage emotional intelligence as an individual. So let's start manage and understand emotional intelligence at our self level. At first, as an individual, we would like to understand and manage it. So let us at first understand the framework for understanding, measuring, and improving EQ. It is visible and it has been observed that people high in self-awareness understand what they do well, what motivates them, what satisfies them, and which people and situation push their buttons. So this is the foundation. So you must know your own things, your own motivation, and your own satisfaction level. The next component of EQ builds upon self-awareness is your ability to use your awareness of your emotions to stay flexible and direct your behavior positively. So not only awareness would be helpful for you, but also you need to know how to manage it to stay positive and also work towards your goals. The next one of social awareness is the ability to recognize emotions in other people. So once you are able to aware or manage yourself, then definitely the next step would be identifying the emotions in others and what's really happening in a situation, in contrast to the natural tendency to think about what you are going to say next. So primarily what people do, they always try to concentrate what they are trying to say. But here, whenever you are trying to understand the emotion of others, you will try to understand how others people are going to understand it. So recognizing the emotion in others. Now, what are the different types of self-awareness strategies? So we are going to understand self-awareness, then self-management, and then relationship awareness and social awareness. Let us start with self-awareness strategies. So the first one of self-awareness strategies would be quite treating your feelings as good or bad. If you are only judging your emotions as good and bad, and based on that you start working on it, definitely it would not be helpful for you to take a strong decision and to manage it. Therefore, you should not treat yourself with the emotions as good or bad. Number two, observe the ripple effect from your emotions. Whenever you are able to observe that when you act on your emotions or act out of your emotions, then what kind of bad effect it's going to produce. So only working based on emotion is not going to give you a positive result. So we need to work out on it, we need to understand it, and we need to analyze it, how bad it is. Number three, lean in your discomfort. Most of the time, we do not want to leave out of our comfort zone. But whenever we push ourselves and go to our unpleasant zone or uncomfort zone, then definitely it will prevent us to becoming emotional, because it will make us more practical, and definitely our self-awareness will improve. Feel your emotions physically. Whenever you are feeling emotional, obviously there has to be certain physical changes. You need to identify that, because whenever the physical changes are there according to the emotion, definitely you would be able to manage your emotions in a much better way. Know who and what pushes your button. So you must know and you must identify exact what kind of people, situation and environment triggered your emotions by dragging them wrong way. You move to a wrong way through your emotions. You need to understand it. You need to make a list and you need to avoid it, or you need to manage yourself on those kind of situations. Watch yourself like a hog. Give a bird's eye view to yourself. Whenever you will not only think from your perspective, you will think from the perspective of another person about yourself from a hawk eyes view, then definitely you will notice your emotions and your behavior according to that emotional situation. Keep a journal about emotion. A best way to do that, if you keep a journal about different emotions, whenever you feel sad, what you do, whenever you feel angry, what you do, whenever you feel anxious, what you do, whenever you feel upset, what you do. If you keep a journal, next time it will avoid yourself to do anything wrong at the time of most emotional moment of your life. You should not go or do anything wrong at the time of extreme emotional moment. Don't be fooled by a bad moment. Most of the time what happened, due to a bad moment, we often take wrong decisions. We often do wrong things. We should not be overwhelmed by our bad mood, and therefore we should be very much aware of it. Similarly, don't be fooled by a good mood either. If you are in a good mood, sometimes again we do wrong things. We give extra promises, we do something which is not at all desirable, we show proud, we show attitude, we show different types of odd behavior to people. And therefore at the time of good emotion also, you must not act in a wrong way and you must understand it. Stop and ask yourself what you do. Why do you think what you do? You must understand what are the things we are doing, why we are doing it. It should be practical, it should be reasonable, it should not be emotional. Now, how to do that? It's very simple. Visit your values. Every person has certain values, certain principles of life. Like, I do not want to say wrong things. I don't want to say any untruthful things. I want to be hardworking. I want to be loyal to my company. I want to be creative. Whatever is your value, your principle, revisit that. Try to understand, are you doing it? If you are not doing it, then definitely you are being played and fooled by your emotions. Check yourself. Your physical appearance always gives you good clues about how you feel. Your look, your walking, your overall communication, everything is a sign of your emotional mood as well. And you need to identify that. Spot your emotions in books, movies, and music. If you're not able to do that, read certain books where emotional things has been described in a much better way. Similarly in movies as well. And also in music. Try to understand it, try to identify it, try to analyze it. Seek feedback. Sometimes seeking feedback is extremely important. If you seek proper feedback from your team members, from your relatives, from your family members, obviously you will understand that whenever you are doing some specific thing, in what mood you are doing it and how to avoid it, how to take control of it. Get to know yourself under stress. Most of the time, whenever we are under stress, whenever we are depressed, we do certain wrong things. We do things which is not at all intended, which is not at all desirable by others. Let us know ourselves whenever we are under stress. We must identify the stressful moment and we should be careful about it. Now, what would be the self-management strategies? We have understood our self. The awareness is being done. So awareness has been created. We now understood ourselves very well by following all these points. I will share the entire PDF at the end of this lesson. You can download it and you can definitely work on these areas, and definitely it will be followed by a self-assessment. But let us understand now, based on our self-awareness knowledge, what are the different strategies we need to follow in self-management. Number one, breathe right. Oxygen goes first to your vital function and then to your complex function and helps you to stay calm. So Learning correct breathing technique, what means learning from the situation, learning from different types of environment, different types of positions. You must know and you must understand it. Number two, create an emotion versus reason list. What are the things you do emotionally and what are the things you do reasonably? Keep a journal, create a list on it, and definitely you can then identify what must be done reasonably, what must be avoided when you are doing it emotionally. Number three, make your goals public. Whenever you are making your goals public, say for example, within a 1 year, I would like to paint 10 pictures, I would like to read a book, I would like to complete a certificate, I would like to write a book, I would like to deliver certain lectures, whatever it is, whatever is your goal, personal, professional, you should make it public up to a certain extent, because whenever you are making it public, you are pushing yourself to complete that. Now, sometime using basic self-management trick to re-engage your rational mind is necessary. So whenever you are feeling extremely emotional, count to 10. Take a breath, then analyze the situation, then you do it. Don't just jump on it. Sleep on it. Sometime you don't know what to do. Only the time will answer your problem. Time will tell you what needs to be done. You will not get an answer immediately. So learn to sleep on it, learn to wait, learn to have patience. Automatically over the period of time, things may change, things will change. Talk to a skilled self-manager. Sometimes speaking with a skilled self-manager or a psychologist or someone who can identify your emotions, it be necessary. It can be your manager, it can be your HR, it can be a psychiatrist as well. Smile and laugh more. Keeping yourself under happy situation, smiling and laughing is definitely very helpful to reduce your stress and manage your emotional intelligence and emotional quotient. So you should be able to do or manage it efficiently. Set aside some time in your day for problem solving. Simply put 15 minutes on your schedule to stop flurry of activity and emotions and take time to think about the disturbance of your phone or computer. So try to think about yourself. Give some time to yourself. Most of the time what happens? We do not give any time to ourselves. We are so busy in managing our family, managing our professional pressure, in different things. We do not even give a single 10 to 15 minutes time to ourselves. Please practice that. Give at least 15 minutes time to yourself at first. Then only it would be helpful for you to identify your problems, your emotions, and you can work on it. Take control of your self-talk. So average person has about 50,000 thoughts per day, each of which triggers chemical reaction in your brain and that influence your emotions and behavior. You usually do not notice. Some of the thoughts are conscious, some of the thoughts are unconscious mind, some of the thoughts are subconscious mind, and that's why we see dreams in our sleep. We may not be very much aware about that thought, but it's going on in our mind. So that's definitely there, but you can improve it by speaking with yourself. So if you are speaking with yourself, what are you looking for? What are your goals? What do you want to do? If you can ask those questions to yourself and can answer to yourself as well, definitely it would be very much helpful to manage your schedule, manage your goals, and manage your objective of your life. Visualize yourself succeeding. A very important thing that you must visualize yourself being successful. Yes, you are maybe right now dreaming about it. You are right now maybe just thinking about it. But you must think about it, how it will look like whenever I would become a successful. Whenever I become an entrepreneur, how it will look like. Whenever I would be rich, how it look like. Whenever I would be very famous as a professional, how it would look like. If you dream about it, if you visualize it, and if you conceptualize it, obviously it will help you to become more rational, more target and goal oriented, not only played but fooled by your emotions. And definitely clean up your sleep hygiene. You must take proper sleep. You must avoid caffeine sometimes and screen 2 hours before bed. Do not see any blue light or anything which will affect your brain and hamper or block your thought process. Focus on your attention, on your freedom rather than on your limitation. Take accountability for what you can influence in any situation. Do not think what you cannot do. Think what you can do, where you can make a difference. You cannot do hundred, thousands of things, but you can do 10 things much better than others. Try to think about that. Do not consider what you cannot do. Try to improve yourself what you can do very well. Stay synchronized. If your body language doesn't match the situation, definitely it would not be helpful and it would be an emotional imbalance. So your body language and your thought process and your speaking should be connected, should be synchronized. Then only people will believe and have faith on you. Speak to someone who is not emotionally invested in your problem. Only speaking with your friend, only speaking with your family members may not be a situation where you can get a right kind of solution, because they are maybe directly connected with your emotions, with your success or failure. Try to speak with someone, a third party, who doesn't have anything to do with your emotions. So speak with them and try to understand. Learn a valuable lesson from everyone you encounter. It's very necessary to understand whenever we are encountering with someone. Maybe the person is giving us some shock. Maybe the person is giving us a very delightful experience. Whatever it is. But sometime whenever we are meeting any third person, at least 1 or 0.1% learning would be there. They are following certain things which may be good, may be bad. But you must learn from it. It's very important to learn from our daily life. We do not go to our school or colleges after completing our formal education. And life is the best teacher. Situation is the best teacher. You can always learn from your life, always learn from the people we meet in your life and the situation you faced in your life. Put a mental recharge in your schedule. Physical activity gives your brain an important rest. So definitely you should give some rest to you. You should recharge yourself and start thinking fresh. Accept the change is just around the corner. Most of the time people get upset because the success is not coming. They are not able to accept the change. But you must understand it takes a moment to happen, for the change to happen and to get the success. It's just at the corner. Maybe you are not able to find it. Maybe you are not able to reach it till date. But it doesn't mean that you will not be successful. Therefore, please focus on your goal and try to remember the success is just at your corner. You may take some time, may not take some time to reach there. Now, the next part where we will talk about how leader can act as a change agent, how you can create impact in an organization or in a project as a change agent. So we will talk about different social awareness strategies. So we understood self-awareness, self-management. Now we will understand social awareness. So the first one is you need to greet people by name. Whenever you are greeting people by their first name, they will be happy and they will understand that you recognize them individually. You give them individual importance. They are not just a crowd, they are individuals and your importance is there. Watch body language. What's the body language of others? Body language talks a lot of things, because we have already discussed non-verbal communication gives 93% of your communication. So we need to read whatever is not being said. Make timing everything. Focus on personal emotion state and take the right timing what you need to communicate. Everything cannot be communicated at every time. A right timing is there. Maybe at the end of the day you should do something. At the beginning of the day you should start with some creative things, or maybe at the good time you can talk about some new things, about some problems. So timing is very important. What time, what you are saying, that is going to give you the leverage to make it happen. You can manage a lot of things by communicating at the right time. Develop a back pocket question. Having a prepared and open-minded question in reserve is useful, but when the conversation is dead, the other person is closing up, just you don't know what to say, you should be used to need some influence, and that is your back pocket question. Whenever the conversation seems to have produced any result, have not produced any result, you should have a question which will actually change the overall situation. You should be ready for it. You should prepare something. Don't take notes at meeting. Whenever you are taking notes at the time of meeting, people will think you are not listening to them. Small notes are fine, couple of sentences are fine, but only if you are taking notes, not listening to them. Maybe you are listening, but still people will think they are not giving any importance. So definitely Keep everything in your mind immediately after completing your meeting. Take the notes, but not during the meeting. Plan ahead for social gathering. Most of the time, what happens whenever we go to a social gathering, we become upset. We say that yes, it should happen, but it doesn't happen there. I'm very upset about that. So if you really want to represent yourself in a right manner, if you really want to have a right treatment for yourself, then definitely you should be prepared for it. What would be your communication? What would be your overall behavior? You should plan it ahead. Everything cannot be planned, but few things must be planned. Clear away the clutter that involve bettering your listening skill, focusing on other person's words and expressions instead of thinking about what you want to say next. And clear the clutter. Don't give any assumption to yourself. Listen, then only you start to think. Don't be in a mood to predict what the other person is going to say and what would be your answer according to that. Listen, act on it. Now, obviously, you need to live in the moment. So you need to understand being present whenever you are, instead of wasting your time. You should not regret your past or worry about the future, but try to concentrate on your present, because past has gone, future is going to come. Definitely a lot of things dependent on that, but on the other hand, if you're only talking or thinking about it, definitely your present would be spoiled, and you need to work during your present time. You cannot do anything in past, you cannot do anything in future. Your present is your everything. Go on a 15-minute tour. Whenever you are too much cluttered, too much overwhelmed by your work, go for a 15-minute break and try to refresh, recharge yourself. Watch EQ at the movies. Sometimes there are very good movies where you can see what kind of body language would be there based on the emotions, relationship and interaction, and based on that you can also understand the same kind of body language in your team member or in your family members as well. Practice the art of listening, very important. That means practicing a conscious focus on the speaker, tone, speech, volume of the voice, and try to understand also what is not being said. Go people watching. In order to improve your social awareness abilities, go to a coffee shop, grocery shop, go to public places, watch their movement, watch their body language, watch how do they speak, watch how are they behaving. The more you watch, the more you observe, the more you try to analyze, you will understand about different social interactions, people thought process, their emotion, how do they manage it, how do they behave according to their emotions. Then understand the rule of the culture game. In today's world, being socially aware requires you develop emotional intelligence across different culture, because different country or different place in the world have different culture. US have a different culture, UK have a different culture, Australia have a different culture, Asia, Africa has a different culture, and that is also in different countries different cultures are there. So you need to understand how people change their emotion based on the culture, because say for example in India, Eastern peoples are extremely emotional, Northern people maybe they are very power hungry, or maybe Southern people analytical. Sometimes people in different country, they are very much like, say for example in case of France, they're very art lover, or sometimes people from UK maybe are sarcastic. It's nothing wrong about it, it's all related with the culture, and people behave according to the culture where they have born and how they grown up. It's not only dependent on the country, it also dependent on their society, their family and the environment. So depending on that, they will develop different types of emotions based on their cultural upliftment. But you need to understand it, you need to identify it, and based on that you need to understand the rules. Test for accuracy. If you're not sure what one is telling about someone, you should always ask, should not assume. Step into their shoes, try to understand what another people is saying. So if you are assuming what another people is saying by stepping into the shoe of another person and try to understand what the another person is saying, definitely it will be very helpful for you to understand what another person is saying or can think in that situation. Seek the whole picture. Most of the time what happens in any situation, we just see the present picture. Maybe in a project, a small development of a module is not the whole picture. You need to talk about the whole requirement of the client. Similarly, in a situation, if someone is behaving in some way, it's not giving you the whole picture. You need to understand what has driven him to do this, what is going to happen, and what is the overall objective. The whole picture is extremely important. Catch the mood of the room. The mood of the room depends what kind of participants are there, individuals are feeling about what, and how you can manipulate and how you can manage. Every group or every team has a different types of dynamics. Every training room has a different types of dynamics. You need to catch the mood. You need to catch how are they behaving, and based on that, you need to manage it. So that's very important whenever you are actually managing or creating an awareness about your social interactions and social responsibilities. Now, in the leaders as relationship builder, we are going to talk about how to manage social relationship. We have understood about creating the social awareness. Now let us understand how we can manage our social relationship or personal relationship as well. That's extremely important. We need to be very much aware and sure about our relationship management strategies. Number one, be open and be curious. Then enhance your natural communication style. You need to be very much natural in your communication. You should not sound fake, and should not sound that you are pretending something. Avoid giving mixed signal. If you are giving mixed signal, people will think in a different way. You should give straight signal. Whatever you are trying to say, be straightforward about it. Remember the little things that pack a punch. Sometimes little words or little sentences can create wrong conception. Try to be very much careful about it. Then take feedback well. Most of the time what happens, we do not take feedback in a positive way. We always think that if someone is giving me a feedback, it's kind of criticism. But on the other hand, it's an opportunity to understand how another people is thinking about me and how can I improve myself. You are not going to appear in an exam, or you are not going to get an opportunity to improve yourself until and unless someone is giving you feedback. So you should accept it well. Build trust, extremely important. Be it in a family, be it in a company, be it in a team. If you are not able to build trust, definitely you are not able to manage it. You are not going to manage your family members. You are not going to manage your team members. Trust is the most important thing in any relation. It starts with that, it ends with that. Therefore, if you do not have a trust within your family members or team members, it's not going to happen at all. Have an open door policy. People should not think twice to speak with you. If you are not penetrable, if you are not approachable, definitely it's very much bad for relationship building. You should be approachable, you should be flexible to listen to people. Only get mad on purpose. Most of the time, we show our anger, anxiousness, and our agitation about the different situation. You can become mad, but on purpose. If it is not purposeful, if it is not going to serve any benefit, do not be mad on it. Don't avoid the inevitable. You like it or you don't like it, inevitable things are going to happen. If your company is going to stop a production of a product or service, you can't do anything about it. It's inevitable. You must accept it. Your life events are inevitable. You cannot stop it. You cannot stay behind. You cannot show ignorance on it. So obviously, you need to accept it. You should not avoid the inevitable. Acknowledge the other person's feeling, extremely important. If you're not able to acknowledge the feeling of another person, if you're not able to understand how the another person is thinking, it's definitely not going to help. Therefore, you need to understand it, identify it, and acknowledge it. Compliment the person's emotions or situation. We often have a tendency to reflect the other person's emotions. So whenever someone is in a bad situation or in a bad mood, you should respond accordingly. Do not respond to anger with anger. So if someone is speaking with you with anger or shouting on you or screaming on you, you should not respond in a similar way. That will worsen the situation. You should be very much flexible. You should be very much matured and definitely control the situation, because everyone is showing the same kind of emotion. The situation will not be improved. When you care, show it. Showing the care is extremely important. People will always love it. If you show care to your family members, show care your team members, definitely people will acknowledge you as a great team member. Explain your decisions, just don't make them. It's extremely important whenever you are making a decision, you should explain it. Because if you are only importing a decisions and announcing your decision, people will not like it. You must analyze it, you must explain it why you are taking a decision. Then definitely the acceptance automatically will come. Make your feedback direct and constructive. Do not give a negative feedback, but give a constructive feedback. You do not only give a negative thing about someone, but try to explain how to improve. Give a constructive feedback directly, and people always will appreciate it. Align your intentions with your impact. Whatever you impact you want to produce, your alignment of your intentions must be there, and that's how you will get success. Offer a fixed statement during a broken conversation. Even a conversation is broken, not going to produce any result, offer a solution to it. Tackle a tough conversation. Obviously, tackling a tough conversation is extremely difficult. We can have certain strategies to manage it, like start the discussion with the common ground, ask the other person for help, don't defend your point, help other person to understand your side, move the conversation forward once that can be said, and follow up concerning what you have discussed. So managing a tough conversation is very difficult, but on the other hand, you can do it by following certain steps. Now the next or the last part of it, leaders and influencer and collaborator, we are going to discuss about it in the next lesson, where we are going to talk about managing people with empathy, where we are going to understand what is apathy, sympathy and empathy, and different types of empathy, lack of emotional intelligence, and how do you behave when someone is showing different problem to you, and how you will learn and develop empathy. All these things would be discussed in the next lesson, and we are going to talk about it in the next session, where we will complete the chapter managing people with empathy. Now we will talk about a case study here. So let us understand the problem. XYZ, a large manufacturing company. The company had hired or promoted 3 people into a managerial role in various departments 2 years, but none of them had been successful. None of these 3 promoted managers are successful. The director of HR identified the ability to deal with the following issues as most important to HR manager's success and greatest cause for derailment. The reasons are working cross-functionally, horizontally and vertically provided service from the directorial level to the individual, dealing with complex emotional issues and knowing when to be discreet and when to maintain neutrality, keeping a cool head during union negotiations, and responding quickly to employee crisis while continuing to work towards long-term goals and systematic changes. Now, the HR director provides a brief history of each of the 3 unsuccessful managers. So these are the reasons which are actually responsible for their reason of being unsuccessful, because these are the couple of points which can be important for the success in the job, but on the other hand, these are the 3 reasons where the manager become unsuccessful. One manager worked well with her team and peers but struggled to communicate with individual contributor in the manufacturing plant and often becoming impatient and hostile. Obviously, definitely she was not able to manage her team effectively. Another manager who had been a member of the team chosen to lead worked well with the outside of his own team but often let his former peers determine their goals and priorities. While he had strong interpersonal skill, he lacked the confidence to command the respect of the team. So she was not able to manage the team and not able to earn the respect of the team as well. The last manager had 5 years experience and seemed to be the ideal person of the job, the best person. Not long after they hired him, the director witnessed a conversation between the manager and an employee in which the manager focused on his own emotional response to an issue rather than to the employee's problem. Over the next 3 months, others noticed the tendency for the manager to possess his emotions. So therefore, he was not listening. He was just expressing about her own emotion. Therefore, in all these 3 issues, all of them were not able to manage their emotional balance. They were not able to manage the emotional balance of the team members, and therefore they were not successful. It has nothing to do with their performance. It has nothing to do with their skill level. It has nothing to do with their competency to complete the work, but it is directly connected with their ability to manage emotional intelligence. Now, what is the solution out here? Creating an emotional intelligence success profile. So this will provide a crucial data to add their selection process. So whenever they are hiring someone, you should have what kind of emotional intelligence or emotional quotient a manager should have to manage a team. Begin by addressing the IQ to all managers in XYZ using manager's last performance appraisal. So what are the things that has been helpful to become successful? Statistical analytics technique, and found that a combination of these sub skills predicted HR manager's success, like impulse control, self-regard happiness, emotional self-awareness, interpersonal relationship and optimism. Some of this emotional intelligence which was extremely important to become successful as a manager, which has again nothing to do with their performance and their competency, but it is completely connected with the emotional intelligence. So they have implemented, or rather incorporated, an emotional intelligence success profile for each of the hiring, particularly for a managerial role. The profile had a 92% accuracy in predicting success rather than relying on guesswork. So conducting a scientific analysis actually allowed the success of the organization, where the recruitment was perfect and definitely the success was much higher. At least they got a 92% success rate, and they ensure good hiring with the right kind of, not only the competency, but the right kind of emotional intelligence. Therefore, the best practices would be implementing a, or creating an emotional intelligence quotient for each of the hiring or each of the role, statistical analysis of the organization role, and there are not any perfect candidates. Sometimes we also need to understand, we need to create some emotional intelligence or impart some emotional intelligence guidance to the hired candidate. So all these things actually can be helpful to have a much better successful manager in each and every individual role. Therefore, we are trying to explain that to be a successful leader, to be a successful manager, you need to have a very good control on your emotional intelligence and emotional quotient. Now we will talk about managing with empathy. Thank you for listening. Bye bye.
We will understand the one of the most recent and modern approach of managing the people, of managing the resource, which is empathy. We have heard a lot about apathy, sympathy, but nowadays the most important aspect which will distinguish you as a people manager is the skill set of managing with empathy. Now, at first, we need to understand what is the difference between apathy, sympathy, and empathy. So, path is the feeling which is associated with the concern or the level of concern about an employee. Now, A is not or no, C means together, and EM is inside it. Therefore, from that understanding, we can say apathetic means you have no feeling at all. You are indifferent. Earlier, it has been thought that whenever you are managing a set of people, you need to be indifferent. You do not need to really concentrate on their personal problem. How are they feeling? They are like the employee or the workforce of the organization. You must not concentrate too much about their well-being. You must not concentrate too much about their thought process. That has happened in the earliest time of the industrial revolution. So that point of time, your workforce is actually mechanical. If you have seen the famous movie by Charles Chaplin, Modern Times, where people are actually working like a robot, people are working like a machine. So you do not need to have any feeling, a specific feeling about that. You just put them in a thought process, in a same process. They will just follow the process. They will just follow the guidelines, come every day, complete their work, take their money, happy. But after the modern industrial revolution of in the early 1960s, and after that, people understood that people and machines are not the same. People have emotions. People do not only work in a cyclic manner by only following the process and guidelines. Therefore, you need to understand them. You need to understand their problem. You need to understand the situation as well. And therefore, the sympathetic ground has come. So sympathetic means when you are feeling together with someone about something. So obviously, whenever you are talking about sympathy, so it's very important that you need to understand the problem of that particular associate, of the particular person. So you need to understand about the person, and you need to have the feeling, how the person is feeling. But the most important, or the most negative aspect of this entire exercise or entire initiative, it has nothing to do of taking any action. So it's like that, you are just feeling the problem, but you are not doing anything. So up to a certain extent it is good, but after the modern workspace evolution, we understood again that only sympathy will not solve the problem. Up to a certain period of time, people or the employee will understand, okay, the organization or the particular person is showing enough empathy to me, but enough sympathy to me, but that's not really very much helpful for my association with the organization. They will not feel connected with you, they will not feel connected with the organization. Therefore, the practice of empathy has come, where you will not only understand the problem, not only show emotion, but also will take some action based on the ground of problem, based on the situation. So therefore, it is one step ahead of sympathy, where you will actually taking an action based on the problem defined by a particular employee. And that's actually very much effective in a modern days, in a modern workplace, and to engage the employee effectively and make them feel that yes, you are a part of the organization. So, I'll just give you an example. Say, for example, a person is drowning in water. So, if you are showing apathy, that means you will say, "This is not my concern. I'm not going to do anything about the person because he is drowning. What should I do?" Sympathy. "Oh my God, you are drowning. I'm feeling so sad for you." But you are not doing anything. So ultimately, the person will drown, the person will die. You are showing sympathy, but are you at all, helpful in order to do something? Not really. So, but if you are empathetic, then what will happen? "Oh my God, you are drowning. Let me see how can I help you." So you are actually doing something to help the person, to save the person. And that's where the empathy is different from sympathy. Now, obviously, if we are trying to define or categorize empathy, we can see there are three kinds of empathy. So, one is cognitive empathy, number two is emotional empathy, and number three is definitely compassionate empathy. Cognitive empathy is the ability to understand how a person feel and that might be thinking. So it's nothing to do with your action, but it's actually your thought process, how you can understand a person feeling and communicate better, and because it helps us really information in a way that reaches to the other person. So it's mostly do with the communication, where you will understand and communicate to the person effectively in order to solve his problem. In case of emotional empathy, you will try to understand the feeling of another person, and the same have described as your pain in my heart. So say for example, it's not only understanding the thought process, but it's also understanding the feeling, how the person is feeling, by his behavior, by his way of communication, by the way the person is actually acting, behaving, showing different types of signs. So you have to understand the feeling of that person by using emotional empathy. Now, if we go for the next step or the next category of empathy, that's compassionate empathy, it goes beyond simply understanding. It's actually beyond sharing their feeling. It actually moves us to take action and help however we can. So, therefore, the first two sympathy or empathy is something has to be dealing with understanding or understanding the thought process of a person. Next one is understanding the feeling of a person. But the last one is not only understanding the thought or understanding the feeling, but also taking an action for the problem of the person and to do something to help them. So therefore, in the modern workplace, the compassionate empathy is most useful, and that is desirable as well. Now, at first, no one will, at a people manager, you need to understand that no one from your team, no one from the people, no one from the employee will come to you to describe their problem. Mostly, whenever in the news some lack of emotional intelligence or some suicide happen, people start reacting in a way that yes, these are the steps you must take to whenever you want to help someone. But try to understand when a person is in stress, when a person is introvert, when a person is having some distress or traumatized problem, they will not come to you. They may not come to you to disclose their problem, to disclose the issues they are facing. You need to understand by some sign languages. You need to understand by sorry, by understanding their body language and different types of reaction in different types of situation. And this can be described as emotional intelligence, how the person is emotionally connected, what is the emotional intelligence of the person. So you have to understand some of the basic, I would say, behavioral pattern, some of the basic nature of the person, and some of his reaction in different situation. And here we have described actually 11 of those reactions, interactions, and different types of behavioral pattern of an individual by which you can understand the person is under stress or his emotional intelligence is at a lower level. Obviously, at the end of the session, we will also describe how to do an assessment of a person to understand the emotional quotient of that individual. So that would be a separate exercise, and we will describe how to do it online and offline as well. So now, if we try to understand what are the 11 different signs where we will understand the emotional quotient or emotional level or intelligence of an individual. Number one, these are the person who got stressed easily. They have difficulty asserting. They have limited emotional vocabulary. So they make assumptions quickly. They hold grudges. They don't let go mistakes. They don't often feel misunderstood. They don't know the triggers. They don't get angry. They blame other people for how they make you feel, and they are easily offended. So you need to understand all these principles, all these processes, and I will describe up to a certain extent for this. So someone who is got stressed for a small workload, a person is being stressed for a heated conversation, which is very natural in a organization. Conversation can happen at a team level, at a client level, and in fact after that we will once again start working together. It doesn't mean that's the end of the world, but they get stressed by that kind of conversation, that kind of difficult conversation. They have difficulty to ascertain themselves. They cannot explain themselves properly. They cannot really explain or understand what are the problem they have, and they cannot really communicate accordingly. They have limited emotional vocabulary. It has nothing to do with your English vocabulary. Emotional vocabulary is when someone is describing his mental feeling, his thought process, his emotional issues properly. Most of the cases, people cannot really describe their emotional issues at a level with proper vocabulary. They cannot describe it, and that's the reason people misunderstand them, and people cannot even really understand them. They made assumptions quickly. By one situation, if they have made a mistake or someone has shouted on them, or in case our client is actually sending a nasty email to them, they assume very quickly that I am a bad performer. That means organization may take some action against me. They are very susceptible to different types of situation, and they take assumptions very quickly. They hold grudges. They don't express. Whenever someone have a grudges, they sometimes express it. They sometimes discuss it. But when people do not discuss it, but hold a grudge, they are offended very easily, or they don't let go their mistakes. They feel they are misunderstood. Then there is a problem. Whenever people think no one understand them, they are not really happy with others. They think that people are actually blaming them for their mistakes. So therefore people would be under stress, and people will definitely will show different types of behavior in that. Most of the cases, people don't understand the triggers. What motivates them? What demotivates them? If you are aware of it, very good. But if you are not aware of it, then definitely it would be a problem for you to explain it to others and also to motivate yourself. So they would be demotivated because they don't know how to motivate themselves, how to get out of that demotivation factor, and that's the reason they cannot really work properly, and they get depressed very easily. They don't get angry. Sometimes anger is very good. It actually a release of a frustration, a release or outburst or whatever is going inside you. But if you don't get angry, that means it's boiling inside you, and you are actually going into depression. And a mode of dissatisfaction. They blame each other people for the problem. They don't really believe they are the source of all the problem. Sometimes may not be, but blaming others will not solve the problem. But these are the people who blame others, and they get easily offended. Only one bad communication, only one ignorance, or simply you have forgotten to mark an email to a person who is actually not really very much emotional, and they get offended easily. So if you have not marked an email to a person where the person must get the information, maybe it has happened mistakenly, but still the person will get offended. So these are the kind of people who has to be managed in a much careful way, must be managed with sympathy and definitely with empathy as well. But at first, you need to understand who are those people, who really requires special attention, who really requires some kind of intervention, and to need your empathy as a manager. Because if you can do that, then definitely successfully you can manage the difficult people, emotionally low emotional intelligence people who have very different disrupted emotional quotient, and who can create problem in future. Now before doing that, at first we need to understand ourselves as well. Are we the person who actually help or have the tendency to help others? So when someone comes to me as a manager, or comes to me as a leader and try to explain negative feedback, how do you react? Are you welcoming them? Are you really motivating them to come to you in future? Or you're saying, here we go again, another annoying complainer. I'm going to sit here and pretend to listen to them and give them the facts of their latest performance measure. I'm not going to understand their emotional problem. I will just tell them about their performance. Why can't he or she pay attention to the really important issues, like getting the project completed on time, delivery on time? Why it is an issue? I need to get more information. I am irritated. What is the person really saying here? Or rather, what is not being said and maybe needs to be addressed? I am not able to understand, even the person is not even saying something. It's very natural the person will not say each and every aspect to you whenever someone is coming with a negative feedback. If you are having any one of these traits, if you are showing any one of this behavior, if you are actually reacting in this similar manner what we have described right now, then you are not really acting as a proper people manager. You need to act compassionately. You need to show empathy. You need to be an active listener. You need to understand their body language. You need to ask them questions, paraphrase it, give honest constructive feedback, and also try to understand the real root cause of the problem. Then only you can be a proper people manager whom the person anyone can depend. As a people manager, you are not a manager who only manage the project. You can manage their emotional level. You can manage their problem. You can manage different types of situation. Then people will look at you as a mentor, as a counselor, and definitely as a right kind of people manager. Now, we need to learn the skill of empathy in order to do that. So now we need to understand how effectively the empathy can be learned and what are the steps has to be followed. Here we have described 10 ways to develop empathy. So first, you need to keep a log of situation where you feel you need to demonstrate empathy. So as I have mentioned earlier, every time people will not come to you and people will not describe their problem right away. So therefore, you need to keep a logbook of empathy where you will log down against each of your resources different types of signs which we have described just few minutes back in the last slide, where we have described the emotional intelligence. Are they displaying any of those behaviors? If yes, keep a note of that. Keep a logbook, a journal book, to note down the different types of emotional quotient intelligence showed by your resources. Number 2, become aware of the incidents where there may be some underlying concern. So some situation can give some different types of concern, and you need to understand those situation and underlying concern in that. So any difficult situation or any conflicting situation has some underlying facts. We need to decipher that. Maybe again keep the note in the logbook. Make a note of possible emotions or feeling that other person may be experiencing. So that also will come for the understanding of the emotional intelligence displayed by the person, which has been described, the 11 types of emotional intelligence described in the last slide. Develop a list of questions to ask at your next encounter with the person and try to make the questions open ended. So don't make a close ended question where the person cannot really communicate much. So those can be or should be an open ended question. Create a list of questions that must be asked to that person. Maybe in our next presentation, where we will do a kind of self assessment of every individual about their emotional quotient, you can get the idea of creating such few questions. And also in the resource we will try to provide some questions which will help you to interview a person to understand their emotional intelligence level. Number 5, practice listening without interrupting and wait until the other person is complete. That's a very important practice. Most of the cases we assume very quickly. We do not let others to complete. And if you do that, then definitely you are not actually listening to them properly. You are not giving them the opportunity to describe themselves. Number 6, avoid being defensive. Don't be defensive and create an open dialogue where possibilities can be explored. So be in a consultative mode whenever you are discussing with someone, in a one to one discussion, in a possible emotional problem where you need to show empathy. Don't be defensive. Don't take that entire thing on you. Maybe it's on you, maybe on the project, maybe whatever, but you must not be defensive. Try to open a dialogue, try to be in a consultative mode, and try to explore opportunities which can resolve it. Allow creative time for people to express opinion ideas. So whenever a person is distressed, whenever a person is actually under pressure, generating creative ideas, exploring different opinions can be very much helpful to reduce the depression and also to understand the depression as well. So it's very helpful for any person who is under stress, who is thinking no one is actually giving them the opportunity, they are not really able to deliver properly, or not really happy with the kind of job assigned to them. Exploring different ideas and opinions can be helpful here. Number 8, practice active listening. Always check out the meaning of what was said. Paraphrasing what is said helps to clear up the misconception. So you may have misconception, maybe you understand the point in a different way, but you need to paraphrase, ask several questions, repeat the question, repeat the problem, and try to understand what exactly mean by that. Don't assume anything. If something is not clear, something is not really, you are not able to understand, try to paraphrase, try to ask relevant questions, try to explore more in order to understand the real problem. Number 9, always bring back focus back into conversation. Remember that optimal effectiveness achieved by focusing on empathy. It's a combination of focus and empathy. So you need to focus on the problem and you need to show on empathy and try to communicate. So you have seen a famous dialogue in Airtel: whenever you communicate, then only these problems can be resolved. There is a famous ad campaign done by one of the famous leading telecommunication partner, where they are saying if you communicate, then only things can be resolved. So that's the key to success. Need to bring back your focus on the conversation, on the communication. And number 10, works on achieving effective balance on focus, goal orientation, and empathetic listening. So actually, as a people manager, you need to have a right amount of balance on focus, goal orientation, and empathy. Because you need to understand, again at the end of the lesson I will say, as a people manager, you cannot really only concentrate on the projects, on the delivery, on the organizational goal. But if you really want to have your people who will follow you as a leader, who will follow you without any hesitant, then you need to intervene in their life and show enough empathy. You need to have one-to-one conversation, do active listening, and show enough empathy, focus, and also goal orientation to them. If you can do that, people will identify you, recognize you as a true people leader. And if you are a true people leader, definitely the managing the project, managing the entire delivery would be a much easier task. Ultimately, at the end of the day, your jobs would be done by the people you are managing, and by the team member who are actually responsible for the delivery. If they depend on you, if they take you as a proper people manager, then definitely no one will stop you, no one can stop you from the right delivery. The project management would be much easier. So the first step to become a people manager, then you become a project manager. With that note, we are going to complete this particular lesson.